All right then, good morning, everyone. Today is June 9th, 2021. This is a regular meeting of the members of the State Liquor Authority being conducted in Albany and also remotely. We have in attendance in the Albany office, Chairman Bradley. We have joining remotely Commissioner Fan. Commissioner Ford could not join us today. We have staff in attendance, General Counsel Meyerhoff, Deputy Commissioner of Licensing Roberts, and myself, Secretary Donahue, in the Albany offices. The next meetings of the authority will be June 23rd, July 14th, July 28th. So keep in mind there's a 3-week gap between the next meeting in June and the first meeting in July. Chairman, do you have anything else before we get going?
No, I don't. No, I don't have anything.
Okay.
I do have something. Obviously, people are going to notice that Commissioner Ford is not here. Commissioner Ford had a family situation he had to take care of today, so he will not be here at today's meeting. We expect him to be at our next meeting.
Right then, the first items on the calendar: 16, 33, 34, and 35. This is a conditional contest of cancellation on bond claim. The chairman is recused from this matter, so since we don't have a sufficient votes to act on it, this matter will be held over. The next item, 1636, a conditional no contest offer of $1,500.
I'll accept 1,500.
Chairman Bradley?
I'll accept.
The next item is 1637. It's a $2,000 conditional offer.
I'll accept 2,000.
Chairman Bradley?
I'll accept.
1638, a $1,500 conditional offer.
Chairman, this is one employee, one patron with no mask. They've been licensed since 1946. I suggest we go to 750.
Back on. I don't have a problem going to 750, but I don't see that they're licensed since 46.
Yeah, that Chairman, that's an error in on the agenda sheet. If you look at the license serial number, it's club license 71, so it's been around for a while.
Okay, 750.
1639 and 1640. It's a no contest pleaded, two pleadings.
I'm at 1,500.
Chairman Bradley?
Yeah, there's a good mitigation letter. I'm at 1,500 as well.
1641 and 42 is a $5,000 conditional offer.
I'll accept 5,000.
Chairman Bradley?
5,000.
The next item is 1643. It's a conditional offer of $1,500. And just as a note, this license has been renewed through 2023.
I'll accept 1,500.
Chairman Bradley?
Accept.
Next item is 1644 and 45. It's a $3,500 conditional offer.
I'll accept 3,500.
Chairman Bradley?
Accept.
1646 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
1,500 accept.
Chairman Bradley?
Accept.
1647, a $1,500 conditional offer.
This location has been around since 1998. I'm going to go to 1,000.
Chairman Bradley?
1,000.
1648, a $1,500 conditional offer.
1,500 accept.
Chairman Bradley?
Accept.
1649 is a pleading default.
I'm at 1,500, Tom.
Okay, Chairman Bradley?
1,500.
1650 is a $6,000 conditional offer.
I'll accept 6,000.
Thank you, Commissioner Fan. Chairman Bradley?
Accept.
1651 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
Gary?
Go on the record, yeah. So just for the record, the paperwork on this conditional no contest offer includes a potentially inconsistency that they checked the box on the second page of the notice of pleading for $1,500, but the letter accompanying it asks for a settlement at $300 and doesn't really make it clear whether that is the offer or just a request to reduce it. So I think the board should treat this offer as being at $300, just so that we can not face a claim that $1,500 was not offered, and counter to $300, which would probably be the easier way to resolve this matter. If $300 is acceptable to the members.
I'm gonna counter at 1,500.
Chairman
Same.
Bradley.
I will do the same.
The next item is 1652, is a $2,500 conditional offer.
I'll take 2,500.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
1653 is a $1,000 conditional offer.
1,000 accept.
Chairman Bradley.
Accept.
1654 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
1,500 accept.
Chairman Bradley.
Accept.
1655 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
This is a case where Council's Bureau believes we should just withdraw the charges rather than accept the offer. Having looked at it, I think it's more appropriate for us to withdraw the charges.
So I would dismiss charge 1 and charge 2.
Yeah.
I will do the
Chairman
same.
Bradley? Okay.
I'll do the same.
All right, so dismissed at council's request. 1656 is a $6,000 conditional offer.
Adam, can you just take a look at this? It says that they have only owned it since 2019, which makes me think that the first sale to minor should not be held against them. So can you just take a look?
Sure. One moment. Yeah, that appears to be correct. 2000, it was issued in 2016.
It was issued
Okay.
in 2006, but was there a corporate change or something that after that made it a new ownership, even though it might have been the same entity?
There does not appear to be any other licensed entity at that premises prior to this license going.
No, but the sale happened at the first sale happened in December of 2016, so it's theirs.
Yeah.
They took over a bunch of test stations, if I recall correctly. So they may be confused as to when they actually took over the store.
Okay. So just leave it alone, right?
Well, as far as
don't
our
have-
records, as far as our records are concerned, this entity has been licensed at this location since May of 2016.
Okay, I'm at 6,000.
Chairman Bradley.
6,000.
1657 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
This is an Outback since 1996. I'm gonna go to 1,000.
Chairman Bradley.
1,000.
1658 is a $2,500 conditional offer.
I'll accept 2,500.
Chairman Bradley.
2,500.
Next is 1659. It's an $8,000 conditional offer.
I'll accept 8,000.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Fan. Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
1660 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
1500 accept.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
1661 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
1500 accept.
Chairman Bradley.
Accept.
1662 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
1500 accept.
Chairman Bradley.
Accept.
1663 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
I'll take 1500.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept 1500.
1664 is a $1,700 conditional offer.
I'll take 17.
Chairman Bradley.
Accept.
1665 is a pleading default, and this license has been summarily suspended on another matter.
And did they get their, did they renew, or they're not suspended anymore? They got
They're
their
not-
license back.
They're not suspended, they have not renewed.
They have not renewed. And
But that's only from Memorial Day, so I expect we
We
probably
could get a
will
late,
one.
yeah, we could get a late renewal, so I do think you should assess discipline here for this violation.
okay,
is pre-COVID,
I'm at 1000.
1,000. Chairman Bradley.
1000.
1666 and 67. It's a $12,000 conditional offer.
I'm gonna accept 12,000.
Chairman Bradley.
This is,
I actually think it should be higher. Can you go higher? Because it is their third. It's their third,
it's their second and their third offense.
right? And so the second would get
I
them
get
to
it, I
75.
understand. It's just,
Okay.
you know, selling Lucy's, and he's talking about selling his business, so I'm just. Where do you wanna go?
I was actually between 17.5 and canceling bond, simply because it's. I mean, these things really offend me simply because they're a theft of a direct theft of tax money.
The first case, which is the second offense, was for 174 cartons of untaxed cigarettes. And then while suspended,
All right. Well, you go to 15.
Yes, I'll go to 15, Chairman.
All right, 15.
All right. 1668 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
I'll go to 15. I accept 15.
Chairman Bradley.
Accept.
1669 is a no contest plea.
And that's not good enough.
yeah, on this one, this is a no contest, and we have an intervening case that was, that has a not guilty plea. I'd like to attempt to try to resolve both cases, so I'd like to adjourn this one to the next meeting if the members will agree.
Okay, but I don't need to keep this, right?
Right. Yeah, I'll agree as well, and I'm not keeping mine either.
Well, it's being held over, so you'll still have the electronic file of it. All right, so it's been held over the 623. $1670 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
I'll accept 1500.
Chairman Bradley.
1500.
1671 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
1500 accept.
Chairman Bradley.
Accept.
1672 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
They've been licensed since 1996. I'm going to go down to 750.
Chairman Bradley.
750.
1673 is a $2,000 conditional offer.
They've been licensed since 1995. This was one employee with no mask. Despite their adverse history, I'm at 1,000.
Chairman Bradley,
I'll do the same.
1674 and 75, it's a $6,000 conditional offer.
I accept 6,000.
Chairman Bradley,
I'll accept.
1676 and 77 is a $7,500 conditional offer.
I accept 7,500.
Chairman Bradley,
I'll accept.
1678 is a no contest default.
I'm at 1,500.
Chairman Bradley,
1,500.
1679 is a pleading default.
This is an availing charge. I'm at cancel and bond.
Chairman Bradley,
Cancel and bond.
1680 is a request for reconsideration of a disapproval of change of method of operation application.
Yeah, for the record, we have in support of this application a letter from the mayor that states it is my understanding that the issues that caused the board to decline this method change were attributable to the prior ownership. That's what the mayor's letter says. It is my understanding. That actually is not true. There were 10 police department responses to issues including violence in 2019 alone, curfew violations, etc. There's a disciplinary history attributable to the current owners of this location, which I believe was the grounds on which it was rejected the first time. So I just wanted to clarify that for the record.
So this is a reconsideration, and basically the 2 points that Gary just raised are the only two things that they've enclosed in their reconsideration as things that we did not consider previously when we denied the establishment.
Well, they also say that they want extended hours because they're near the casino in Schenectady. There's also a letter from the police chief, which they did include, but it's quite vague. I think it doesn't really address the reasons that the board had concerns about this place.
All right, then with that, on the request for reconsideration, Commissioner Fan, are you ready to vote?
Yes, I'll vote yes on reconsideration.
I'm sorry, you're voting yes for, okay.
Yes.
Chairman
Yes.
Bradley,
I'm going to vote no. I think that my considerations when I denied this the first time was not just based on the previous licensee, but more so was based on the conduct of this licensee, who was paid $25K in fines, including disorder, focal point, and extended hours. And I don't see anything in the reconsideration that would, that to me is new, that would change my decision.
all right then, so with the tie vote, the request is denied. The next item is 1681. This is a new on-premises liquor license application.
So this is a restaurant with 4 employees, no security and principal to manage, no music, no dancing, they say no private events. The max occupancy is 112. There'll be 7 tables with 14 seats and then 7 seats at the bar. So their occupancy is much larger than their table seating. The applicant was on a temp for restaurant wine at this location from September to December of 2018 and never renewed the temp. The application was conditionally approved in December of 2018, and the application was then disapproved, or the conditional application was then disapproved in May of 2019 because the applicant was caught serving when he was not on a temp, even though he had a conditional license and he never fulfilled the conditions. There is no protest. They have the support of the local PD and the mayor. There are conflicting diagrams when compared to each other in the application. The applicants do have another license called 303 Restaurant LLC, which appears to have expired, but there's no adverse history. It looks like this is a diner menu within a community market, and it is open right now without alcohol.
All right, so with that, Commissioner Fan, are you ready to vote?
Yes, with the police department support, I am going to vote for a second chance and vote to approve.
Chairman Bradley.
And I will do the same.
The next item is 1682. It's a new package store application.
This is a store with one employee, which will only be the principal. The principal will be the only employee. The principal is currently a sales clerk at a liquor store, indicates that he will quit should this be approved. There are 4 protests. It's 924 square feet. 660 square feet of that will be retail. 0.2 miles away is the closest. There are 4 within 0.4 miles. The opposition indicate, or I'm sorry, the opposition indicates there are 7 stores within about 0.5 miles. And it will not be bulletproof. None of the closest stores are bulletproof. Do we have a personal questionnaire for the lender on this?
Look, we do.
Okay. I don't need to see it. I just want to make sure.
All right, Commissioner Fan, are you ready to vote then? You're muted, Commissioner Fan. Sorry.
I vote no on reconsideration.
No, this isn't a reconsideration.
This is not a reconsideration?
This is 1682.
I'm sorry. I just vote, I sorry, it's been around for so long, I thought it was a recon, but no, I vote no, thank you.
Chairman Bradley.
I'm going to vote no as well. There's 7 stores within just over 0.5 miles, which is, a 5 or 6 minute walk. The population, as everyone is aware, due to the pandemic, has decreased in New York City, and while it probably, I would expect, will come back, I don't think anyone can predict when, and so I don't see any public convenience and advantage to adding a new one now.
All right, 1683 is a new package store application.
So this is a liquor store with 3 employees and a hired manager. It will be bulletproof. The principal has no experience in the industry, says he will be active at the premises. This was not a previously licensed store. I looked at the diagram. The diagram does not look like this is a bulletproof store. Can you check that, Adam?
Sure.
There is one protest. It's going to be 900 square feet total. 700 square feet of that will be retail. 0.8 miles away is the closest store. There are 4 within 1.8 miles. The opposition indicates there are 7 stores within 2.75 miles. Many of the closest stores are actually across the river in Albany County. Whether that means anything to Commissioner Fan or not. And That's other than what my question to Adam. That's all I got. Oh, the closest stores, none of them appear to be bulletproof. One other point, there is the investment. It is, in my mind, low. It's only $7,500. So I don't know how they're going to pay rent and open a liquor store on $7,500.
Yeah, I mean, so if they disclosed to us on their method of operation that it was going to be a bulletproof store, you are correct. The diagrams don't appear to show that. It just lists shelving areas. If that is something that is of concern that you want them to be a bulletproof store, we would make a condition of approval that they provide us photos showing that space as bulletproof.
I don't know that I want them to be what they're supposed to be, I guess is what I'm trying to figure out.
So they proposed their license application is a bulletproof configuration. So if that's how it's going to be licensed, that's how it should be licensed.
Okay. That's all I have, Tom.
All right, then, Commissioner Fan, are you ready to vote?
Yes, I'm gonna vote to deny. I don't think we need another bulletproof store, as Chairman mentioned.
Chairman Bradley.
I'm going to vote to deny too, for the same reason. I don't. Actually, 3 of these stores are across the river. 3 of the closest stores are across the river in Albany County or Saratoga County. But I just don't see the public convenience and advantage of adding a bulletproof store when there's an open store less than a mile away.
All right, the next item is 1684. This is a new on-premises liquor license application that's subject to the 500-foot law.
This is a bar tavern with 6 employees, 2 security guards. The principal will manage. There are some inconsistencies in the application, meaning conflicting information. The application says recorded music, live music, DJ, jukebox, karaoke. Then the personal interest statement at the 500-foot hearing says DJ, recorded music, and jukebox. And then the community board stipulations that they say they entered into, even though they are unsigned and unnotarized, say DJ, jukebox, and karaoke. So so what they are doing as far as method of operation, I have no idea. Their application also says no private events, but they will use promoters. The public interest statement says no private events and no promoters. Once again, have no clue what they're doing. The prior license here was summarily suspended and then canceled in 2020. There's also a pending action against that licensee that's still open. There are 7 bars within 500 feet of this location. The applicant will be using the prior licensee's trade name and has purchased the prior licensee's business and got the prior licensee's lease assigned to him. The lease does not cover the term of the license. It expires in 2022. That's pretty much all I got.
Well, we also, I mean, you mentioned it in part of what you said, but there's an assertion that there's an agreement with the community board, but the document that's been attached is just a form that does not appear to have been signed by the community board. We have no way of knowing whether that's just something the licensee filled out and the community board never saw, or it's actually something that's a stipulation.
Which actually says at the top of the form that it's not valid unless signed and notarized.
We also have a letter. This is the one where we have
email.
We have a letter from the outgoing licensee, the one who's canceled, who, among other things, says that this applicant initially was brought in to the business because they were in the process of a sale and he wanted to understand how the business worked, but then was actually operating the place because the actual licensee was unavailable due to COVID family related issues. So the accusation is being made that the conduct that led to this cancellation and the violations of the executive orders, which were serious, were under this applicant's supervision.
All right then, Commissioner Fan, are you ready to vote?
Adam, is there any information we have about the investment, the flow of the money that comes in? Because this investment is $126,000.
So based on the agreement, the promissory note that they have, a closing of $126,000 was supposed to be given to the seller. We don't have any evidence that transaction has occurred yet. It may have, we just don't have evidence of it. So if the members are to approve this license, I would recommend that we make a condition of approval, proof that that sale and transaction actually occurred for the $126,000 represented in the letter and on the expenses.
Where there's payments.
Right. But basically what happened here was that they were suspended for yield violations last year, and then they took a cancel and bond. They submitted a CNC of cancel and bond, and then now someone who was working there doing the violations is applying. Is that accurate?
Let me double check on the cancel and bond. I don't know if the matter has been resolved yet. Oh, it was summarily suspended. I don't know if the matter's
Yeah, I
been
think
resolved.
they did cancel.
Yeah, no, it's
offered cancel.
It's been canceled. There's still another pending suit out there that obviously will be canceled when
Okay.
it gets here.
And
then,
we
yes,
got a
you're-
note from the seller of the business.
We did receive an email from the seller of the business, as counsel pointed out, indicating that part of the reason why it was canceled was because it was under the operation of our applicant here. Looking at the bank records, there is some indication to suggest that the prior licensee had been making electronic transfers to this applicant's bank account, again, which is reflected in their bank records. So there is certainly evidence that the prior licensee was paying our applicant here. So there is certainly a relationship that could be brought into question.
Okay. So essentially money that should have been settling the summary suspension went to someone else to buy the business from him. That's basically what happened, right? I vote to
It
deny.
could have.
Chairman Bradley?
I'm going to vote to deny too. I mean, I obviously there's payments going to the applicant from the former licensee. Now the former licensee is telling us that the applicant was actually working for him or with him during the period of time that the violations occurred with the last licensee. And then we have the deposits from the last licensee into this individual's bank account indicating that he was getting paid from the licensee, and I can't think of another reason why he would be paid by the former licensee other than for helping him manage the store or manage the establishment. So he clearly did not put any of that information on the application in his employment history. In fact, he's indicated that his last employment was in September of 2009 at a place called New Seltz R Us, where he was doing electronic repair as the owner of that business. So there's just too many misrepresentations or potential misrepresentations for me to grant this license.
All right, the next item is 1685. It's a package store removal.
This is a store with 4 employees and a hired manager. The current store is 1,500 square feet with 900 square foot retail. They want to move into a place that's 5,400 square feet with 2,790 square feet retail. They're basically moving 170 feet from their current location within the same shopping center. The closest store is 0.5 miles away. There are 5 within 0.9 miles. There are no protests.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the record that the way in which the letter in support is phrased, they say that this was just an opportunity to move into a shopping center where there's a fairway, et cetera, et cetera. as if they were moving to the shopping center for the first time when they were already in the shopping center. That's a misleading explanation for this move, which it seems pretty obvious to me. I'm not quite sure why that would be in their letter.
Yeah, it's obvious that they want the store's 3 times the size, more than 3 times the size as the current store. That's what they want.
And they do disclose on their application. They indicate they can't meet client or demand based on the size they have now.
Okay.
All right then, Commissioner Fan.
No, I'm not in a position to support an expansion of the store 3 times of its current size, so I am going to vote to deny.
Chairman Bradley.
I'm going to vote to deny as well. The license for the current store was granted in 2018, and at that time, had they asked for a store of this size, I know I would not have granted it given the number of stores that are within a mile, and I can't see any public convenience or advantage to granting it now.
All right, 1686, excuse me, is a new package store license application.
This is a store with no employees. The owner will manage, has no experience in liquor store. It will not be bulletproof. The closest store is 1.1 miles away. There are 4 within 2.5 miles. It's going to be 3,000 square feet. 2,500 of that will be retail. The total investment is $6,000. The monthly rent is $2,296. So first and last month's put him close to $5,000, which means he has $1,000 for inventory.
All right, Commissioner Fan.
As Chairman mentioned, the financial disclosures here are not really bringing any comfort, so I'm going to vote to deny.
Chairman Bradley.
I'm going to vote to deny as well. There is absolutely no way that this individual opened this store with $6,000 alone. So the reason we ask for the investment is because we want to know what the investment is. And just putting in a number, particularly a number that low, is not sufficient.
All right, 1687.
Hold on. I just want to comment on the record. One of the other reasons that we want that number is because we're doing diligence to make sure that there isn't a secret partner or somebody who's not disclosed who's an investor.
Exactly.
And in circumstances where a number is put in just because it happens to match what the applicant may have in his bank account, that gives us, not only does it give us no confidence that this is the only owner, but it suggests that there has to be another owner. So, that's why that information is required.
Right, 1687 is a new package store application.
The store with no employees, the principals will manage. The closest store is 0.4 miles away. There are 4 stores within 7.96 miles. There is 1 protest. It will be 1,200 square feet and 700 square feet devoted to retail. And this is actually in my backyard as well as council's backyard, more so his than mine, but it's certainly close enough to me for me to understand. And some of the representations made by the rep or the applicants regarding population growth as well as other things they raise are just not accurate.
I in my role in trying to make sure that the board is not misled by misstatements in the record, I have to say that there's an assertion that there's been a population increase in this area, and then literally dozens of pages of documents that purport to support that claim. And I went through all of them, and I don't see anything that suggests that there's a population increase. Maybe that home sales are up, yes, and that the price of homes in that area may have risen. But the notion that there are more residents now than there were before, for any reason, is completely unsupported by the documents that have been submitted.
And I have lived in that area most of my life. And I can tell you that the population in Ulster County is not increasing.
All right then, Commissioner Fan, you're ready to vote.
This proposed store, it's very, very, very close to another one. And I just don't think the numbers at the other store is justifying in that there's increased demand. And along with everything that Chairman Bradley and Council mentioned about population growth or lack thereof, I vote to deny.
Chairman Bradley.
I'm going to vote to deny as well. There is a store, it says 0.4 miles away. Based on my recollection, I think it's even closer than that. And then there's another store, a relatively large store that is 2.3 miles away. This is a very small village with, other than if you're walking in the village, it's a driving community. And as Council pointed out, this is one of the toughest areas in Ulster County to actually do new building. And in fact, I believe there was a hotel proposed within the last few months that the town basically denied, correct?
The town doesn't want any changes.
So I don't see a need at this point for a store that is as close to this one. The applicants were obviously very strong applicants in my mind. I just don't think it's a good spot.
All right, the next item, 1688. It's a new grocery store beer or wine products license.
This applicant had an AX license canceled in March of 2018 and then had two others previously that were surrendered. The applicant was disapproved here in 2020 because of false statement in the application, as well as a false statement regarding her adverse history, and also failure to provide 5 years of employment history. This AX was previously licensed, and the place is open now without alcohol.
I would also add that the cancellation in 2018, which is the same adverse history that was not disclosed, was not based on misconduct other than the fact that the location never opened. So the charge was non bona fide because I think there was a stop work order and they were never allowed to complete their work, and that's what led to the cancellation.
All right then, Commissioner Fan. You're muted, Commissioner Fan. Sorry.
Given that the prior disapproval history is now all cleared up, I'm gonna vote yes on second chance and vote to approve.
Chairman Bradley.
I'm going to vote to approve as well.
Next item is 1689. It's a new on-premises liquor license that was subject to the 500-foot law.
It's a restaurant with 8 employees, 1 to 2 security guards, and principal to manage, recorded music, jukebox, and karaoke. They will have private events 6 to 8 times a year. Max occupancy is 100 people. There are 22 tables with 77 seats and a bar with 8 seats. The owner does have experience. There are also unsigned stipulations with the community board. There is a church within 65 feet. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so we do have records consistent with what the applicant says, that the location has been licensed as an OP since around the mid-1980s. The open question, though, is when the church arrived, which the applicant presents no evidence of. But we did look at the Department of Buildings records, and it appears that the church probably arrived in the 1990s because they got a temporary certificate of occupancy. I'm sorry, did we say the 1990s or the 2000s?
The original filing went in the 1990s.
Right.
To transition, to make an alteration to a synagogue.
Right. So I think based on that, the board could rely on it and conclude that the church came after the OPs were already, an OP was already in place, and therefore the OP license is grandfathered under Section 64.
Considering that there was a gap in licensure from March of 2015 until September of 2015.
Yeah,
So that is one of the questions before the members to make a determination on the continuousness of licensure for the premises.
Right.
but
But it
we-
was empty.
Well, we don't know one way or the other, but we do know that there have been a series of restaurants licensed as series of OPs licensed in that location all along.
So it never, to our knowledge, it never became anything else.
Correct.
It may not have been licensed, but it wasn't. Okay. The STIPs indicate a 1:30 closing time Sunday through Thursday and a 3 a.m. closing time Friday and Saturday. One security guard Friday through Sunday, 8 p.m. to close. The service will end 1 hour before closing. Recorded music. These are the STIPs, so the STIPs are actually different than what they applied for. So they agreed with the community board, recorded music only and food at all times. It is a 500-foot case, and as they pointed out, it has been licensed for years with little to no adverse history. The ALJ did find public interest.
And I just want to comment for anybody watching that on the questionnaire, when we ask you if there is a church or a school or a synagogue or another place of worship within 200 feet of the licensed premises, you should be indicating yes, whether or not it's going to be grandfathered in, or your interpretation of whether it's going to be grandfathered in or not. That's for the authority to decide, but for the purposes of clarity in the record, you should be disclosing that these things are there and then providing a supplemental explanation about why you believe it should be grandfathered in.
Also, there's a difference between grandfathered under the 500-foot rule and the 200-foot rule. Tom will correct me if I'm wrong. The 500-foot rule has a grandfather issue that relates to its passage in 1993. So if you were licensed before 1993, you can be grandfathered. The same thing does not exist for the 200-foot rule. For that, your license has to exist before the church or school went in. Is that right?
The 500-foot law, which was enacted in 93, so if a license was already there, it's not subject to it.
Right,
Unless there's a break.
right.
For the 200-foot law, for both on and off premises, if the establishment was already, I don't think you had to be licensed, like just a restaurant before 1934, it's grandfathered in. Otherwise, the question is whether or not, which came first, the license or the place of worship or the schools.
Right.
And whether or not there's been a continuous licensing. All right, so with that, Commissioner Fanny, you ready to vote?
Yes, so the 200-foot rule is not of concern to me anymore. I have a question about the CB3 STIPs that were submitted, because as Chairman said, I don't see a collaborating signature from the community board itself. I only see the notarized stipulation agreement, supposedly.
Commissioner Fan, if that's an item of concern, we can make a condition of approval that we get an executed signed copy of the community board stipulations by both parties.
Okay, that's fine, because this looks like the same community board as the one that we just had prior, so maybe just see what their process really is. Other than that, since the 500-foot hearing came out finding public interest, and the rep here saying that this family restaurant was unanimously approved by the community board, I am going to vote to approve with the following conditions: Sunday through Thursday until 1:30, Friday, Saturday until 3 a.m. One licensed security guard from Friday through Sunday. Alcohol service will end 1 hour prior to closing. Food at all times, recorded music only. No promoters. Did they need bathroom waiver? I don't think I saw that here.
No, they do
and
not.
the condition that that we get a confirmation from the community board that they support this.
All right, Chairman Bradley?
I will do the same.
All right, next item is 1690. It's a new package store application.
This is a
You-
store with two.
Sorry, guys, can I take 2 minutes?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank
Thanks.
you. I'm good to go, Tom.
All right, great. Then we are,
Tom,
yeah,
before did you turn it on yet or no?
well, we didn't turn it off. I just had to sign up.
Okay. Fine.
You need to take a brief recess for anything?
No.
Okay. Next item is 1690. This is a new package store license.
This is a store with 2 employees and principal to hire a manager. Principals do not have any experience. It is a husband, and it appears that they're a husband and wife team. It's not bulletproof. There are 3 protests. It's going to be 1,140 square feet with 646 retail. 0.3 miles is the closest store. There are 4 within 1.2 miles, all of which are not bulletproof. And the location was not previously licensed.
All right then, Commissioner Fan, are you ready to vote?
Yes, there's multiple protests. There are quite a few stores in Queens Village already, so I'm not seeing the demand to justify an additional store. I'm voting to deny.
Chairman Bradley,
I'm going to vote to deny as well. There's 4 stores within 1.4 miles. All of the stores are actually showing relatively flat sales. The closest store we did not get a response from. I don't see any evidence of products or services that are not being offered by the other stores, and I don't see any evidence that there is a population increase in this area that would indicate that there'll be an increase in demand for alcohol. Just for the record, the representative does say one of the stores is bulletproof, and she sends a picture in, but while it does look like it has glass up, the door to the store is open, and it looks like it allows the customers to walk into the belly of the store. So maybe it's partially bulletproof or bulletproof at some times, but when she took the picture, it was clearly open.
All right, then the next item, 1691. This is a new on-premises liquor license application.
This is a restaurant with 4 employees, no security. The principal will manage until 12 a.m. daily. Recorded music only. Max occupancy is 30, with table seating for 30. So I don't know how that works with their employees. There's no customer bar. The principal says he formerly was a chef, although does not have experience managing a restaurant. There are stipulations with the community board, which gave them a 12 a.m. closure. The ALJ found no public interest, solely on the fact that the submission sent in by the representative was insufficient. We ended up having actually to do 2 500-foot hearings because the representative did not fulfill their obligations.
But we still don't have a public interest statement in support of a 500-foot case.
And they also need a restroom waiver.
I'm sorry, we have a statement, but we don't have an explanation of why licensing this premise would be in the public interest. That's what I wanted to say.
And with all due respect, we can't consider a waiver request for bathrooms if no request was submitted to us. So yes, while they may need a restroom waiver, no request was submitted to us, so we can't consider them.
All right, are we ready to vote then on this?
Oh, well, it doesn't seem like we're ready to vote on this, right? I mean, we don't have the public interest statement. The application is not complete, right?
We can still vote on
I
it.
misspoke. That they initially did not submit any public interest statement, and that's why they lost their first 500-foot hearing. Then a submission was made, but it didn't include in answer to the questions why licensing this location would be in the public interest.
Okay.
Which is why the ALJ denied it again.
Right, so originally no questionnaire was submitted. They requested reconsideration, provided the documentation. We granted reconsideration and brought it before the ALJ again. After submission, there were still questions by the ALJ who determined they have not met the standard for public interest, which is in part the reason why it's here. So the ALJ says no public interest. We know they need a restroom waiver, but they did not request a restroom waiver, so we cannot consider that, I believe, here.
Yeah, look, I can't just, I can't create the application if it's not here, so I'm gonna vote to deny.
All right, Chairman Bradley.
Well put. I'm going to vote to deny as well.
All right, the next item, 1692. It's a new package store application.
So this is a store with 2 employees. Principal will manage and also hire a manager. Principal does have experience as a intern at a wine store recently. This is 1,450 square feet, 1,250 square feet will be retail. We already denied a store at this exact location less than a year ago, so I don't know what has changed. There are 2 protests. The closest store is 0.4 miles, and there are 4 within 0.5 miles. We did also approve a wine store license, not within the 4 closest, but certainly just outside the 4 closest within the last year.
Yeah, I would also like to make clear on the record that there's a letter that was submitted in support of this application. And point 1 in that letter is, quote, population and area increasing, end quote. And it's underlined. And That's the point and the assertion that's made, that the population in the area is increasing. And yet the applicant provides no support for that claim, no studies, no numbers, even though it is routine to do so if you're going to claim population growth. It does cross-reference documentation put in support of the denied application, and says that there is support for the population group in there as part of Exhibit 3 to the reconsideration request. I looked through that document, and I found no reference to population growth. There is actually one document in there that reflects what the population was on a certain date and another date, and it didn't change. It was flat. I would also add that in support of this claim of the population in the area increasing, there is a document provided by the applicant's representative from www.unitedstateszipcodes.org for other issues. But interestingly, on the last page of what's submitted, there's an indication that the next section of that website discusses the population. But that portion of that document that's submitted was not provided. But I went to the website, and the portion that seems to have been excised from the submission shows that the population actually was flat or went down since 2015. So I think it's a misrepresentation. It's clearly not supported by these documents, that the population in the area, it's a misrepresentation to say what's attached supports the claim that a population in the area is increasing. I will also note that the same representative letter looks at the three nearby liquor stores who responded with sales data that all showed sales going down consistently, and says that that they've rebounded in 2020, as if that had something to do with just the market, without ever mentioning that all the restaurants and taverns in that area had been closed for the majority of 2020 because of the COVID pandemic. As if there had been, the elephant in the room that's not mentioned is that rebound, which the board has consistently attributed to a aberrational spike related to COVID. There's no discussion of that. It's just the plain suggestion is made that this market is rebounding. I just felt it necessary to clarify that for the record.
Okay, with that then, Commissioner Fan, are you ready to vote?
Yes, I vote no on reconsideration.
Now, this is a new application. 1692. You're muted, Commissioner Fan, sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm voting no.
Chairman Bradley.
I'm going to vote to deny as well. We denied a store at this exact location less than a year ago. As council pointed out, the sales may have gone up in 2020, but over the course of the 4-year period, the sales have declined on 3 of the 4 closest that we got responses from. And based on the pandemic, it's clear that the sales may have gone up in 2020, but I don't think anybody expects those increases to be sustainable. So I don't see any public interest or public convenience and advantage.
All right, then, the next item is 1693. This is an application for a new on-premises liquor license. It's currently a summer liquor license. I would just note, as I've already advised the members, that on Monday, I received a request to adjourn this matter for 90 days while an issue with the lease was addressed. Yesterday, I received an update saying that the applicant would need 7 to 10 days to address the issue. So with that, I'll turn it over to the chairman.
This is currently a seasonal license, and it wants to be a full OP restaurant with 8 employees, no security, principals, manager, recorded music only, will close for private events. Doesn't indicate how often. There's 74 people is the max. Table seating for 53 with 10 seats at the bar. There's also an outdoor patio with occupancy for 44. There is an anonymous protest related to this license that indicates that, one, they don't have a lease, which has been made clear to everybody. 2, that there are undisclosed interests and investors in this establishment that are not on the application. And that 3, there's an open investigation into the operation of this establishment by the New York State Department of Labor, which, can we check on that? Not right now, but I mean,
We can, certainly something we can ask.
if we need to. I don't know what the situation will be here. So as pointed out by Secretary Donahue, the lease that this seasonal license is under has expired. We have indications from the landlord that they have no intention of renewing it, even though the rep indicates that they are now in negotiations, yet they need 3 months to fulfill those, or I guess now he says 7 to 10 days. The other concern I have is I looked at the paperwork that was submitted, and it's quite clear to me that the signatures, at least of one of the landlords, look to be forged. They clearly are not his signatures consistently on documents that have been submitted with this application. Whether someone signed them with his approval, signed his name with his approval, or whether they are actually forgeries, I guess remains to be seen. But that's a major concern of mine as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, and just for the record, it's not even a matter of discretion. Under ABCL Section 1061, the State Liquor Authority can't license this place unless we have a lease that covers the license period, which we don't have.
All right, then, so we have, I suppose we have both requests for the matter to be held over and then action on the application if you're not going to hold it over.
She's just.
I don't know, Chairman. I mean, I can kick it down to July, but I don't even know if I see the lease, whether I feel comfortable approving this. Where are you at?
I am denying.
All right.
I mean, this has been here, you know, this application was filed at the end of December of 2020. These are all issues that clearly could have and should have been resolved long before it got to us.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It's another version of, you need to do your work. We can't create it for you. So I vote to deny.
Okay. The next item then is 1694. It's a new package store license.
This is going to be a package store with 3 employees and principal will manage. The principal does not have any experience. It will be 1,665 square feet, 1,100 square feet retail. There is one protest. The establishment has not been previously licensed and it is not bulletproof. 0.2 miles is the closest store. There are 4 within 0.5 miles. And it appears that there are 10 stores within 0.7 miles, according to the opposition. 5 of those 10 stores are actually on 101st Avenue, where this store is located, all within just over a mile of the applicant.
Also, the applicant claims that it is going to sell Indian liquors, projected to be 75% of its inventory. And I believe the closest store is Bulletproof. That's the claim by the petition, by the applicant.
The closest as well as the third closest is Bulletproof.
All right, Commissioner Fan? Are you ready to vote?
Yes, I vote to deny. The numbers just really don't justify demand for another store.
All right, Chairman Bradley.
I'm going to vote to deny as well. There's 10 stores within under a mile, which is all obviously walking distance, and there's literally 5 stores on the same street in just over a mile, or within a mile. So I don't see a public convenience and advantage to adding another one, even if they are going to specialize in Indian liquors.
All right, then next item, 1695. This is another new package store license application.
This is a store with 3 employees, manager to be hired, principal will do bookkeeping and the hiring, but will keep her job. So I apparently will work part-time at the store. It's in a new shopping plaza. It will be 2,000 square feet, 1,800 square feet will be retail. The principal has owned 2 liquor stores before. Currently was recently on a liquor store, and I believe was just taken off with her husband. It was taken off via corporate change. And the husband actually is one of the 4 closest stores, meaning that they will compete against each other. There is no protest. The closest store is 0.4 miles away. There are 5 within 1.1 mile. They say they are replacing a closed store that is 0.22 miles away. Is that accurate, Adam? Or that was 0.22 miles away.
I can look into that.
The husband, ironically,
129 6787.
the husband, ironically, who owns the store that she was a partner with him in, did not respond to our sales number request, which kind of concerns me.
And for the record, the applicant was removed from that liquor store in 2014.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Not recent. Well, I guess recently, depending on how you define recent.
And Chairman, bond grade wine and spirits at 375 Tompkins Ave expired in October of 2019 and had not been renewed. So that store no longer exists.
All right, then, Commissioner Fan?
Oh, so many things that the chairman said it's of concern here. Considering that the applicant does not plan to be at the store, I'm going to vote to deny.
Chairman Bradley.
I'm going to vote to deny as well for one, because of the number of stores within 1.1 miles. Also because the husband, frequently we don't get sales numbers from liquor stores. They don't respond to our request for sales numbers. Many times that's because they either forgot or put the letter down or indicate they didn't receive the letter, so therefore they didn't really get notice that there was another store coming in. How her husband could fail to respond to our request for sales numbers in the store he owns, which happens to be one of the 4 closest, is beyond me. So I'm going to vote to deny.
All right, the next item, 1696, is a new package store application.
This is a store with 1 employee, principal to manage. Principal has no experience. 650 square feet, 625 will be retail. This store was previously licensed. It will be bulletproof. There is no protest. The store that was previously licensed here closed in 2017. The closest store is 0.46 miles away. It is not bulletproof. It is not bulletproof. There are 4 stores within 0.82 miles.
$13,000 investment.
All right, then, Commissioner Fan?
some concerns about the fact that this is gonna be a bulletproof store and the low amount of investment, as council pointed out, even though there are no protests. I'm gonna vote to deny.
Chairman Bradley.
I'm going to vote to deny as well. There are 4 stores in under 1 mile, I'm sorry. And even though he is or would be replacing a store that closed in 2017, I don't understand how anyone is opening a liquor store for $13,000. So until somebody shows the accurate number of investment in the business, I'm not going to grant that license. I don't see any public convenience and advantage.
Right there, next item is 1697. It's a $1,500 conditional offer.
I will accept 1,500.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept as well.
1698 is a $2,000 conditional offer.
I'm gonna accept 2,000.
Chairman Bradley.
Accept.
1699 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
I'm gonna accept 1,500.
Chairman Bradley.
Accept.
1700 is a pleading default.
I'm at 1,500.
Chairman Bradley.
1,500.
1701 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
I'll accept 1,500.
Chairman Bradley.
1,500.
1702 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
I'll accept 1,500.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
1703, a $4,000 conditional offer.
I'll accept 4,000.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
1704, a $3,500 conditional offer.
3,500. Accept.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
1705, a $1,500 conditional offer.
I'm gonna go to 1,000, Chairman.
Chairman Bradley.
1,000.
1706 is a default adhering.
Yeah, for the record, the licensee claims that they had technical difficulties, and that's why they were not able to appear at our virtual hearing, which is on WebEx. But while I would have recommended not defaulting them on that grounds, having looked at the case again, I do not believe we should be proceeding with this case and ask the board to dismiss the charges.
All right, I'll dismiss charge 1 and 2.
All right, Chairman Bradley.
I will dismiss both charges as well.
All right, next item is 1707, a $1,500 conditional offer.
I'll take 1,500.
Chairman Bradley.
1,500.
1708 is a $7,000 conditional offer. There's also another matter against this licensee, is 1709, which is a no contest plea.
So,
with respect to-
just
Go ahead.
before you proceed, Tom, seeing that there were 2 separate cases here that involved a first, a second, and a third suspension of cigarettes, tobacco products charge, following on a sale to minor in the adverse history, I asked my prosecutor to reach out to the licensee to see if all this could be resolved, since the licensee apparently sent in a CNC for the first case and then an open-ended no contest for the second. Those efforts to reach the licensee were unsuccessful. It did not respond to phone calls. But we have a first, second, and third offense of suspension of cigarettes charges across the 2 cases, and an adverse history of a sale to minor.
Okay, then, with respect to 1708.
I
Commissioner
will
Fan?
I will accept 7,000.
Chairman Bradley.
I will accept 7,000 as well.
And now with respect to 1709, the no contest plea from the same licensee.
I'm a cancel and bond.
Chairman Bradley.
Cancel and bond.
Next item, 1710 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
1,500 accept.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
1711 is a default at pleading.
Yeah, counsel's office would like to dismiss charge 4 before discipline is considered for this case.
All right, with that, Commissioner Fan.
I will dismiss count 4, and I am at 12,500.
Chairman Bradley.
I will dismiss count 4 and 12,500.
1712 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
1,500 accept.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
1713 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
1,500 accept.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
1714 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
I accept.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
1715, a $1,500 conditional offer.
I'll accept 15.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
1716 is a $1,500 conditional offer.
15 accept.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
1717 is a pleading default.
I'm at 2,000.
Chairman Bradley.
I will do the same.
1718 is a $2,000 conditional offer.
I'll take 2,000.
Chairman Bradley.
I will take 2,000 as well.
1719 is a pleading default.
I'm at 8,000.
Chairman Bradley.
8,000.
1720 is a conditional offer of cancellation and bond claim.
Cancel and bond.
License summarily suspended. Okay. Chairman Bradley.
Cancel and bond.
1721 and 22 is a conditional offer of $25,000.
I'm gonna accept 25,000.
Chairman Bradley.
So I actually looked into this a little bit, the case, and I don't know that it's mentioned in the memo, but this is a restaurant that they are trying to turn into a nightclub, or have been, and they were warned on multiple occasions about the DJ and the hookah, and it continues to be advertised on social media. On top of that, the lawyer or the representative sent our investigator a email on 10/28 indicating that the hookah has been taken out of the premises and no longer being used. And our investigator drove up there on 10/29 and found that, lo and behold, the lawyer representative lied to him. There was hookah everywhere. So I would ask, can we go higher? Because this is somebody who clearly got multiple chances and threw it in our face.
You're muted, Commissioner Fan. There we go.
I mean, do you feel like they deserve another chance?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine finding them. I just think that 25 is low, given that they were warned, and I'm not talking about once. They were warned on multiple occasions.
We also have in the record that when our investigator was first there, the owner admitted on September 10th that she knew that hookah was illegal, and they seem to have addressed the minor, more minor, finer safety issues and claim that they responded promptly to the letter says we fixed everything. They don't say anything about the DJ booth that they constructed without permission and were advertising on Instagram along with their hookah service.
I mean, it doesn't have to go significantly higher. I just wonder if 30 is a better number, and with the understanding that if they come back again, that's the end.
Sounds good. I'll agree with that. 30,000.
All right.
All right, $30,000 counter offer. The next items, 17, 23, and 24 to $3,000 conditional offer.
I'll take 3,000.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
1725 is a pleading default.
I'm at 5,000.
Chairman Bradley.
So there is. Is this the one that improper conduct charge was selling 6 to a sick? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is. There's the first charge in the adverse history for improper conduct was selling a tobacco product to an underage person, 16 years old. Then the sale to minor, and then this offense, all within a year and a half.
Can you do 7,500?
Yeah, I'll do 7,500.
Thank you.
All right, $7,500. Next item, 1726, a $1,500 conditional offer.
1,500 accept.
Chairman Bradley.
Accept.
1727 is a $6,500 conditional offer.
6,500 accept.
Chairman Bradley.
Accept.
1728, a $4,000 conditional offer.
You know, I rarely do this, but I think this is high. I'm gonna go to 2,000.
Chairman Bradley.
Commissioner, I hope it has nothing to do with the name of the place.
No, actually.
I'll go to 2,000.
Oh God.
Next item, 1729, a $1,000 conditional offer.
1,000.
Chairman Bradley.
1,000.
1730 is a pleading default.
1,500.
Chairman Bradley.
1,500.
1731 is a pleading default.
Was the prior one a default as well?
I don't know.
We're gonna take a look for you.
You're asking if the prior disciplinary
Prior
was a
year
default?
violation, the case that went on May 21,
Right, that was a default.
that was
That's
a
what you're
default as
asking.
well. All right, I'm at 2,000.
Chairman Bradley.
2,000.
1732 is a $3,000 conditional offer.
I'll accept 3,000.
Chairman Bradley.
3,000.
1733 and 34 The $10,000 conditional offer.
I'll take 10.
Chairman Bradley.
10.
1735 is a $2,000 conditional offer.
2,000 accept.
Chairman Bradley.
Accept.
1736 is an application for an alteration.
So this location is currently licensed as a club on the fourth, fifth, and sixth floors. I believe they have parts of the fourth and fifth and all of the sixth floor. They want to add the elevator that is dedicated to their club as part of the licensed premise from all the way to the lobby, and they also would like to license part of the lobby. The purpose of this is so that they can avail themselves of the opportunity setting up outdoor dining under the New York City, what's the program called, Adam?
Restaurants program.
Restaurants program.
Open restaurant.
Open restaurants program. So they want to basically take their club outside, and in order to do that, they need to license the lobby. They're going to set up a service bar in a anti-room off the lobby, 13-foot service board or service bar. I recall this license, this club license being coming before us. It was a 500-foot case, and it was extremely contested by the community board. He obviously received the license, and I don't believe there has been, or to my knowledge, there have not been complaints about this location. The community board, not unsurprisingly, does oppose this strongly. However, they seem to be basing their opposition on legal grounds, which I believe are incorrect. So do you want to?
Yeah, so the community board says that this move to be licensed on the ground floor wouldn't fall within the New York City Department of Transportation's open restaurant program based on their interpretation of what it means to be on the ground floor. Well, I looked at the New York City Department of Transportation, the same document they're referring to, and it says that you can essentially open up outside if you, quote, have business frontage on the ground floor, end quote, which is kind of vague. It doesn't say you have to have an operating restaurant on the ground floor. But then again, it doesn't make it clear that if you have non-contiguous operations on higher floors, that if you just get licensed, 1 square foot on the ground floor, that would be enough. I think the fairest thing to say about the New York City Department of Transportation definition is that while it seems to be broad enough to contemplate something like this, it would be a real reach to suggest that the New York City Department of Transportation had this in mind when they crafted that language. Clearly, the idea of allowing restaurants to move outside during COVID was to give them a business opportunity to open up and make some money in a location that was part of and close to where they would otherwise be operating from the ground floor. That was my understanding of it. That understanding was incorporated in the way in which we issued guidance in connection with open restaurants in New York City. So while there's a dispute over that issue, I don't think that's necessarily what's at issue for the members.
Well, they also point out that they don't believe that the open restaurant program is available to club licensees. I think they're incorrect in that as well.
Yeah, I don't see any restriction on that.
But as you point out, the open restaurant program was set up to assist restaurants in getting revenue when they couldn't use the indoors or they had to do social distancing indoors. Obviously, New York City is now at 100% capacity, and this is a club license. So I don't understand. I fail to find any real public benefit to moving a club outside that won't even be available to the public anyway. It would only be available to members, and this is an exclusive members club. But that's me. That's all they're asking for. They have no intention of seating anyone in the lobby or using the lobby other than as a thoroughfare to, I guess, serve the people that would be in their outdoor patio.
All right, then, with that, Commissioner Fan, are you ready to vote?
So I have a few concerns about this. As council mentioned, don't think that DOT really thought of this scenario as the intent when they created the open restaurant program. I'm concerned that even when the open restaurant program ends, that this establishment will be left with a bar in the lobby serving customers. So I believe I would have voted this way, whether it was an OP license or a club license. As chairman said, I don't really see a whole lot of public interest in allowing a license that's on the 4th, 5th, and 6th floor of a building to operate out on the street. I think that opens a giant can of worms that we cannot handle. The streets would not be able to handle. And so, regardless of the community boards, perhaps their legal bases are not accurate, but I'm going to agree with them that this application serves no public interest, and I'm going to vote to deny.
All right, Chairman Bradley.
And just to be clear, it's not we're not basing this on public interest. I indicated public benefit. I didn't see any public benefit.
Right.
Yeah.
Public benefit.
And I think that the community, and I agree with you, while the community board's justification may have been wrong on legal grounds, I think their concerns about what would happen here are very real, obviously. The other part is that had this been proposed when this club was licensed, I don't believe, and I'm not talking about the patio, I'm talking about the lobby and the elevator. Had those been proposed when this license was first in front of us, I don't believe for a second that would have been granted. This was never intended to be contiguous to the street. The whole point was that it was going to be separate. It was an exclusive club on the 4th, 5th, and 6th floors. So I don't see how circumventing what I think is circumventing the open restaurants program by simply trying to license the lobby and the elevator to get a private club out onto the street, because for a temporary period of time they're going to be able to serve on the street is what that program was intended for. So I don't see any real justification for allowing it now, particularly since it is a private club, and I don't see any public benefit to it. So I'm going to vote to deny as well.
All right, the next item, 1737. This is a request for reconsideration of a package store disapproval.
So just so the record is clear, I did receive an email from Senator Hoylman today, and I just want to make it clear that I have delivered that to Commissioner Fan, so she has it as well, right, Commissioner?
Yes, I have that.
Yeah, and that came in late, and while we generally don't accept items after Friday, certainly from the industry, because they're fully aware of when we accept these items, the senator obviously is not aware of that policy, so would have no idea. So as a result, I instructed Secretary Donahue to make it part of the record.
Yeah, also, just for the record, this is a license application that the board rejected. It's a reconsideration. There's two principal grounds for the request for reconsideration. The first is that the applicant claims that the most recent sales numbers that the board considered the first time did not include the holiday season in 2020, and because liquor stores do a large percentage of their business during the holiday season, they thought it was proper for that to be considered. That the reconsideration request doesn't address the fact that sales numbers generally in 2020, given the unique circumstance we're in, have not really been relied upon by the board as in connection with a trend in the increase stability or decrease in the demand for alcoholic beverages in an area. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is that this Carnegie Spirits store has closed, and the board should consider that. I look back at the video of the first time we considered this. That issue was flagged for the board, and Mr. Roberts confirmed for the board before there was a vote on this application that that license had been surrendered. So that is not new. Those were the two grounds that were raised in the reconsideration.
All right, then with that, on the reconsideration request, Commissioner Fan?
As council pointed out, I don't see any new information here, so I'm gonna vote to deny reconsideration.
Chairman Bradley?
I'm going to vote to deny reconsideration as well. I considered both issues previously and was aware of both issues that they're trying to raise as new issues when I made my decision last time. So I don't see anything new here that would change my determination.
All right, the next item, 1738, this is a request for reconsideration on disciplinary matter. The board had rejected a conditional offer of $22,500, made a counteroffer, cancel and bond claim. Now the licensee is suggesting, proposing $50,000 and a 14-day suspension.
And just for the record, this is the kind of case that if we were not in the midst of COVID, when the counteroffer of cancellation and bond the first time had not been accepted, we would have taken to hearing, but we prioritize hearings on suspension cases and executive order matters over the past year. So this case has been sitting for some time, and certainly if it's not resolved today, we will be taking it to hearing promptly.
All right, so with that, Commissioner Fan, you want to, your vote on reconsideration?
So, council, can I just ask you a question? So to the extent that we countered cancel and bond and they didn't accept it, so the store has been open and doing business this whole time, right?
That's correct.
And the fact, the fact that the hearing, sorry, the fact that the hearing,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, sorry. But the fact that the hearing didn't get scheduled was because we changed our priorities, right?
Well, we get to cases as we can, and sometimes it does take a while for a case to get to hearing, but we did change our priorities. That's the reason for the substantial delay in this case.
Okay.
And Commissioner Fan,
And
before the, I just want to know, before the pandemic, the prosecutor had actually scheduled a hearing that got adjourned. So it was moving along through counsel's office.
And
Okay,
while we assume they've been open, they certainly could be open. I don't think anybody actually knows that they were open.
No, they've been licensed, and they have not been suspended. We don't know whether the doors have been open or not.
Okay. Another question I have is there a way to set a penalty that requires them to sell the store because that's what they're saying they plan to do?
The answer to that is no. The penalties that are available, well, first of all, you're not setting a penalty. You're considering whether to reconsider and accept their offer of $50,000. But I do not believe you can give a counter offer that requires them to sell the store or anything of that kind. That just fines, cancellation, revocation, suspension. Those are the discipline available.
Okay. So I'll vote yes on recon, and I will accept 50,000 and 14-day suspension.
All right, Chairman Bradley.
I will as well.
All right, then the next items, 1739 and 1740. This is a $3,500 conditional offer.
3,500 stuff.
Chairman Bradley.
I'll accept.
Next item is 1741, it's a proposed advisory.
Okay, so this is the proposed advisory on contracts that compensate a third-party provider. As we announced 4 weeks ago, we put the proposed advisory on the website and also delivered it to people who had protested or sent in responses to the prior version of this advisory back in 2019. We gave parties an opportunity to send in responses to the revised draft. We got 12 responses, and before we move forward, just so that I can, create a fair record for the members to consider, I want to discuss a little bit about what was said in response and at least put forward my understanding as a legal matter as to why why the board is considering doing this advisory. I think we should start with the purpose of the advisory, and I think the purpose may have been confused a bit, perhaps by early press coverage related to this issue and maybe the prior draft. But the purpose of this is actually quite narrow. It's to address availing by third-party providers. As we know, those who have, for example, shares in a corporation are put on a license because they have an interest in the revenues of the business. There are also circumstances in which third-party providers are not, shareholders in the business or partners, named partners in the business, but through a contract, they end up in that capacity because they have a percentage of the share of the revenues of that business. And this has always been a requirement under the law that if you have a revenue share of the business, you need to be on the license. ABCL Section 111 requires that liquor licenses be made, quote, available only to the person therein specified, end quote. And the agency has always dealt with circumstances where parties might have a percentage interest in the revenues or sales of a licensed business. In fact, our application has a question on it in the right to premises form, question 2, which requires applicants to identify other interested parties who will share on a percentage basis or in any way the receipts of the business to any extent whatsoever. So the way in which, at least the application poses the question, any percentage at all that someone might have through a third-party provider agreement would require disclosure at least and perhaps co-licensing, but certainly disclosure at least. Disclosure to us so we can consider whether that percentage gives some party that's not named the privileges of the license. So the question of what to do about this really arises because the statute is ambiguous to some extent. It doesn't say whether any revenue sharing would violate the law, 0.08% versus some other percentage, or whether there's some de minimis level of revenue sharing that the board would consider, that the authority would consider to not convey control. And the State Liquor Authority has for decades had a practice of clarifying that ambiguity in one particular context, and that is the context of landlords and leases, where it's had a longstanding rule, not written in the law, but created as an interpretation of the law, that if it was 10% or less, we would view it as de minimis. The State Liquor Authority has also considered the same issue in the context of multiple declaratory rulings that started to arise when the internet and internet service providers began seeking the board's clarification of how particular business plans would consider this issue, because they planned on compensating third-party providers through a percentage of either some portion of their business or their overall business. So this is an issue that has come up repeatedly, and the purpose of the advisory is to address in a uniform way how these issues would be dealt with by the authority. There's been a lot of responses that talk about whether or not, you know, the liquor authority has jurisdiction over percentage sales that are of non-alcoholic beverages, not things other than alcoholic beverages, and whether we're beyond our jurisdiction based on that. And I think that I think that question is based on a confusion of two issues that are involved in availing that I would like to make clear. There are basically two types of availing. One type is where you're a partner in the business and you profit from the sale from the business's revenues and thus the sale of alcohol, and you're not on the license. You're an undisclosed shareholder, let's say. The other is where you're not disclosed and you're operating the business or you have control over the business. Two different types of things. So the question in this circumstance, and for the purposes of this advisory, is what are we trying to address here? And the answer is we're really just looking at the control issue. We are not looking at the did you profit from the sale of alcohol issue, and there's a reason for that. If the focus of this was if you get any dollars from something that was other than the sale of alcohol, we don't have jurisdiction. Or if you got dollars from the sale of alcohol, then you had to be on the license. Then anybody who receives any money from a licensed business would have to be on the license. If you sold them paper clips, if you're a landlord and you have a flat fee rent, that money is coming from the sale of alcohol. But no one would say that that's an availing. And the reason is you're giving something in return for that, right? You're not just an undisclosed partner in the business. You're actually providing the space if you're the landlord, or the paper clips if you're selling goods, or the third-party services if you're providing delivery services or the like. So the mere fact that you might be receiving money from a licensed premise doesn't create an availing and is really irrelevant to what we're trying to accomplish here. This issue is about control and whether somebody who has 60% of the revenues of a business would obviously have control. Somebody who has 30% may have control. Somebody who has 0.05% probably doesn't have control. And how is the authority going to interpret that going forward? The answer is, at least from this proposed advisory, by extending the 10% rule to all sorts of third-party providers. So, so this draft sets that percentage. It also creates a more detailed procedure than that current one question on the application for applicants and the State Liquor Authority to utilize to make sure everybody knows where they stand with respect to these types of agreements. That's the purpose of the advisory. And before I get into a little more detail on what the responses were, I should mention that there were two responders who requested that the board not approve this advisory until there could be a further discussion at another public meeting on the record where I guess there would be more oral argument. And with respect to that request, I do think that the board should consider it, but I do want to make a couple of points. First thing is that there's no requirement that there be any public discussion or oral argument about how the State Liquor Authority is going to interpret the law. We don't generally have such oral argument in connection with advisories. We certainly haven't been doing them during COVID. So as far as being restrained from granting this before there's additional public discussion, I don't see any legal requirement. The second thing is, I have to say, one of the first things I did in this job was attend the first public session we had on the last draft of this document. I spent a lot of time reading all the submissions, and then I attended the meeting, and I have to say it was unproductive. I don't think anybody who attended the meeting advanced any arguments that were not fully set forth in writing. And I just didn't think that it added much to the analysis that there were valid objections made to that draft, and those objections were taken into consideration in the revised draft. But my view is that such a session would be unproductive, And this it would just cause a further delay of what we believe to be a long overdue advisory. That's really not about delivery services. It's about basically everything we do in trying to stop availing in a million different contexts that could arise for the agency. So with that, I guess the first question is whether or not we should adjourn or should proceed.
All right, as to council's question about do you want to hold the matter over for further comment? Commissioner Fan?
While I think that I can benefit from being able to ask some questions directly, but as council said, I don't see any further input really impacting the outcome here. And we've already had one hearing before the pandemic. So I'm gonna vote no on that.
Okay, Chairman Bradley.
I'm going to vote no as well. Obviously, I was running the last public hearing. I believe it went for over 4 hours, and while many of the arguments put forth were useful and certainly were incorporated into what we have here today, a lot of them, what I did notice, and I actually mentioned on several occasions and asked this not to happen, was that what people were doing were simply getting up and reciting what they'd already mailed in, the written comments, which we have taken written comments again, and we received 12 of them. And at this point, I think that I have a very good handle on what certain aspects of the industry want and what certain aspects of the industry don't want. I don't know that I don't know that I need further discussion to understand what their concerns and what their issues are, and we have taken all of those into account in the drafting of this document.
Okay.
All right. Before we consider a vote, Council Meyerhoff, do you have further discussion?
Yeah, I have substantial further comments to make.
Can we take 2 seconds then? Is this a
Sure.
good time?
Yeah.
A
right,
2-minute break, Tom?
Take a brief recess. I believe we just need Deputy Commissioner Roberts back and we'll be good to go. All right, then are we set to resume? All right, then we are back on the record regarding item 1741, the proposed advisory.
Okay, so a little more detail on the responses we received. 7 of the responses were made on behalf of third-party providers. 4 were on behalf of retail associations or groups of retailers. And then there was a 12th response that didn't identify who it was on behalf of, but from 2 regular practitioners before the agency. The third-party providers who opined were largely the delivery services. None of the many other categories of third-party providers put in any input. Whether that would be, landlords, promoters, anybody else who does business with the industry. And again, this is not focused on delivery services, but that is the major group of third-party providers that responded. As to the response of the retailers who put in letters, you cannot help but know immediately upon reading those responses that they have viewed this advisory as some kind of step by the State Liquor Authority to protect restaurants from delivery services. And they start from that premise and then grow angry about how we're not protective enough of delivery services. Well, it's not so surprising that they're disappointed that we haven't, for example, addressed other ways in which delivery services may have been attempting to control licensed premises, because that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to deal with a revenue sharing issue that's vague in the law that needs to be clarified. So if all you're talking about is interpreting section 111 with respect to this revenue sharing issue, none of that is material. I will also comment that none of the responses offer any legal support, not a single citation to case law or statutory language to support any of their objections. There's one exception to that, which I'll get to in a bit, but this is largely off-the-cuff proselytizations, I don't know if that's a word, about why the law should or shouldn't be a certain way. That's really not supported by statutory or case law authority. Most of the responses criticize the advisory without offering any alternative solution for the authority's issue in addressing this matter. That's on the bad side. On the good side, there were responses that pointed out language issues that either, were confusing or that there was some language in there that was not clear enough. And in certain respects, I don't disagree, and we have created a red line version of this document that seeks to address those language issues. For example, a critique was made that we weren't consistent in language throughout on what total revenue was, or where sometimes it said total revenue, sometimes it didn't say total revenue. That's a critique that was fair in some respects and unfair in other respects. There were 2 locations where the word total should have appeared before the word revenue in a later paragraph because it was talking about total revenue. But there is a distinction that the advisory makes that's an important one, where sometimes we're talking about total revenue and sometimes we're not. That's a distinction of importance. in the paradigm example of a delivery service that's charging 30% of each delivery, that is a percentage of some portion of the sales, not the total sales, of that licensee. If that deal was at 10%, then there's no way that that deal could end up being more than 10% of the total revenues, even though it was only based on a portion of the revenues. And for that reason, we're not concerned about those kinds of contracts. But if it's talking about 30% of any subset of the total revenues, of any sales or revenues of the business, then we need to know more about that to decide whether there's a total revenue issue over 10% or not. So those are intentional distinctions between the use of the term total revenue, which is an accounting term, and the use of something less than total revenue. There was also a point made about how we failed to include the exhibit on what the 10% of total revenue statement would look like. That's correct. We did not have that exhibit ready when we circulated the advisory. Rather than go through this all again, my suggestion to the board is that we delegate licensing to create a form that is consistent with the advisory. That delegation would free up licensing to modify or fix the form if somebody points out a mistake in it, or come back to the board if it needs clarification, but we would handle it that way. But there won't be anything magic in that form that changes the substance or content of what the advisory is supposed to accomplish. I would also point out that with respect to all the questions about why doesn't the advisory do this or why doesn't it do that? So for example, the New York City Hospitality Alliance says there are these other things that that delivery services are due to control restaurants. And one of the other submissions said, well, how come this doesn't say anything about hotel managers who may or may not have 10%, but they're always have to be on the license? Okay, well, that's all true, but you're overlooking one of the most important paragraphs in the entire advisory. After we deal with this revenue sharing issue, there's a paragraph that says, and I'm quoting, "Please note that this advisory only addresses certain financial compensation agreements. It should not be interpreted as permitting other financial arrangements that result in third parties obtaining significant control of a licensed business. And all such arrangements are subject to review to determine whether the potential for significant control over the licensed business requires notice and or co-licensing." End quote. That language demonstrates to everybody that while we are establishing this 10% rule for purposes that are industry-wide and that don't apply just to delivery services, if you have another issue of control, this document doesn't answer it. It's something that needs to be brought to the board's attention in some other respect, either as a declaratory ruling, maybe it's a request for another advisory in a particular area that might have some universal appeal. But we should not get caught up on the fact that this doesn't address other issues. It certainly doesn't make what we're addressing here improper to say, if you have another issue, it should also be in here, and say, you know, we reject that. We're not putting that in here. This document deals with the revenue sharing issue, and attempting to address other issues in it, in my view, would be a mistake, because we can't anticipate all the other possible issues that might come up with respect to control that might be even tied to this revenue sharing. So the one issue that I did think had some legal merit to it was an issue raised by the SKANE law firm, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, about a small subcategory of licensees, stadium owners, arena owners, etc. They contend that many of these venues end up taking more than 10% of revenues from their concessionaires, which would mean that they would have to be on the license under this advisory, because it's more than a de minimis amount. They'd actually have to be on the license whether this advisory existed or not, because the law has always been the same. The question is whether or not we are enforcing it. But they argue that if they are on as retailers, that will create a tight house issue for them because they also have advertising agreement with manufacturers. That is a legal issue, but what I suggest for that issue and for any other that might arise about the way in which this might impact a particular sector of the industry is that you raise it with us and either get a council opinion or seek a declaratory ruling, and that issue can be addressed. If you bring that tight house issue to the board, you may be surprised at the response that you get. But that is the way in which I would suggest that that be handled. So those are kind of my general comments. I did discuss this issue about whether we had jurisdiction. Some of the, I have a few more here. Some of the responses suggested that we didn't have jurisdiction to regulate non-alcohol sales of businesses that have liquor licenses. Again, that's not what we're doing. We're considering the issue of control. And in that regard, it doesn't matter how the money was earned. The same thing would be true of a landlord. I mean, that is the reason that we know we have jurisdiction over this, because we have essentially given this interpretation for landlords for decades. And if we have no jurisdiction to grant, to issue this advisory, then we also have no jurisdiction to create a de minimis exception of 10% for landlords. That comes off the books. If you buy that legal argument, I don't particularly buy it because I think when there's an ambiguous provision of the ABCL, it's not only our jurisdiction to do it, it's our obligation to clarify that for the industry. The related point that the New York City Hospitality Alliance made was that the advisory is legislation. Again, that is directly in conflict with the position we've taken on the landlord issue, which I'm sure the New York City Hospitality Alliance agrees with us on. If we have the ability to create that 10% exception as de minimis, how could that not also be legislation if you buy their argument? I would also want to address this comment that we are imposing an additional regulatory burden on restaurants. The interesting thing is that most of the responses that mentioned that were the delivery companies and the internet-based providers. They were most concerned about that, and it's kind of hypocritical for them to be so, because here they are opposing this advisory because they want to be free to charge whatever percentages they want and not be on licenses, even though the law doesn't allow it. But saying, oh, we're really concerned about the regulatory burden on restaurants. The fact of the matter is, the law has not changed. That regulatory burden has always existed. The fact that licensed businesses haven't gotten enough control of their third-party contracts to accurately respond to the question on the application, do you have any, I'm fairly certain that it is a routine practice that if you have a third-party provider agreement that would require you to answer yes on that question, that people generally do not do so. And maybe they didn't have it when they applied, but then their failure to notify us that they now have somebody with a revenue sharing interest is a violation of the law because they have a duty to notify us about that. So yes, the fact that we are going to enforce this area of the law to make sure that we don't allow availing, that might impose some additional burdens, but they're not burdens that are already contemplated. They are burdens that are already contemplated by the law. They're not being created by this advisory. I would say the same thing about this contention that restaurants are going to have to choose between having delivery services and a liquor license. This is a point made only by the third-party providers. None of the retail associations are actually concerned about that. I think they will acknowledge that the delivery services are an industry that will be flexible enough to create compensation arrangements that will allow restaurants to do both, but not be in a position where they're availing. So that's that. There was also some comments made about a section of the advisory that talk about what a commercially reasonable flat fee would be. One of the comments was, you haven't described that specifically enough. It's going to create some confusion. Well, I guess, again, it depends on what you expect the advisory to do. The advisory is not going to solve all issues, and it can't anticipate every type of agreement that might be out there that looks like a flat fee agreement, but it really is a percentage revenue agreement dressed up as a flat fee agreement. That language is in there to make it clear that this is not, once you get a flat fee, it doesn't mean that that ends the analysis. It certainly makes it more likely that that won't be viewed as control. But it's not possible to define exactly what that means because we don't know what types of agreements are going to be created. I will say this though, and we've discussed this, if you have an agreement that has a flat fee amount, let's say for a delivery service, that is $10 for $100 of sales, $20 for $200 of sales, $30 for $300 of sales, that's a percentage deal. That's not a flat fee agreement. It's just dressed up as a flat fee agreement. But those are the kinds of things that we will have to look at and address in the context of this dividing line. And, it'll be governed by on a case-by-case basis. There are some comments that there should be a total aggregate limit of 10% for all third-party providers because, perhaps a few third-party providers collectively will end up controlling the business. Well, that again misses the point. The point is if you are an individual third-party provider and you have less than 10%, we're saying that's not enough to control. But if you are acting in concert with 3 other third-party providers to get control of the business, that would be within our factual, in that paragraph that has an exception. Now you have additional facts that suggest some level of control that might constitute an availing. And that would be something we'd have to consider on a case-by-case basis. What else do I have here? There's been some who suggest, maybe it's not fair to require businesses to project what their total revenue would be before they open during the application process. Yes, in some circumstances, it would be difficult to do that. If you're a restaurant who hasn't decided how much business you're going to do in delivery, and maybe it's going to be based on how easily you'll fill your restaurant, then you're in an area where that would be difficult. But if you are a restaurant like in New York City, a Chinese restaurant that has 4 seats in the location and is opening up and is going to be basically basing their business on delivery, then maybe it's pretty easy to know that you're going to be over 10%. I think those who are concerned about that need to trust that, what is the denouement of this advisory? It's that if you violate some of these provisions, there's a potential prosecution for availing. We're not going to bring cases where we're, getting into an argument about whether fair projections were made at the application stage. We're not going to do that. And you shouldn't expect us to do that. But the alternative to wait, for example, until there's just a renewal before, and some track record of business before you first have to address this issue, really opens the door to availing for every license for a very long period of time. And respectfully, I don't believe that's acceptable. Finally, there was one legitimate point, and I apologize for not remembering who made it, and that is with respect to reviewing your own revenues on a continuing basis to see whether your third-party provider agreement has now gone over the 10% level. The way the current draft was created, it included language that said if your payment, if your percentage for any 3-month period or annually was over 10%, then you'd have to notify us and potentially co-license. So it was any 3-month period or annually. There was a comment that did create an arduous burden for people to keep track over 3-month periods. There's also the issue that some businesses are cyclical, and maybe over a year it wouldn't be 10%, but it might be for particular 3-month periods. I think that was a legitimate point, and based on that, I'm suggesting a change to the members that we eliminate the 3-month piece and just have it as an annual requirement that you review your revenues to see whether what may not have been a 10% issue has now become an over 10% issue. Okay, that's all I have to say. Apologize for the lengthy comments, but in this context where we are in the middle of COVID, I do believe that the board would benefit from hearing, for lack of a better term, the other side to some of the points that were raised by the protesters after they saw the advisory in draft, and that's why I put all that on the record.
Unless there's any need for further discussion, I believe the question is whether you're prepared to go forward then to vote on the, what is I refer to as the red line version of the draft, the proposed advisory that's been with the proposed changes by council. That's what I refer to as the red line version. So that is what is before you. So if we're ready to proceed with a vote on that, we can.
I just have a couple of questions before we move forward. When licensing creates that form, is it going to be a sworn statement? Just because we're asking for a projection, it seems like no one can really swear to that.
Well, the way in which people swear to projections all the time. The question is whether the projection is an estimate or not. You can swear it's a reasonable estimate. The language I would foresee for that is that I swear that this is a reasonable estimate based on the information I have at this time, or something like that, or some level of reasonableness. That would be the way we would do it. But that's something we can certainly discuss further when we look at the form. It's a fair point because, for example, in the law of fraud, usually projections are not viewed as something that you could have a present knowledge of, such that you could be said to have lied about them. However, in circumstances where, for example, and again, we're not talking about just delivery services. If you are entering into an agreement with somebody who's going to operate your business from the side and have a 40% interest, and you phrase it a certain way, but you already signed that agreement, your projection could be a misrepresentation based on what you knew at the time. So I think there's a way to phrase that would be fair, and I certainly don't intend to try to trap people into projections, but understand your point, and that is, I think, a fair way to address it.
Okay, can I ask another question? So about the ongoing obligation, so it kind of falls within like some of the other obligations that licensees have, right? Like if they were doing a corporate change, like this sort of, you're kind of putting it in that same bucket, right? Like it's on you to tell us if your situation changes, right?
Well, the law has a requirement that any change in fact has to be brought to the attention of the authority. So that runs the gamut from corporate change to whether you've been arrested, to whether you now have new partners in your business, to whether you've entered into an agreement to share revenues with somebody that is more than the de minimis amount. And right now, without that requirement, it would still be an obligation for licensees to provide that information to us. I'm just putting it in terms that make it, I guess, more clear as to what the agency is expecting, and giving parties a safe harbor that they actually don't have right now to remain under 10% with that agreement and have no obligation. Right now, they have to answer a question in their application that says, does anybody getting any percentage of your receipts? They say no. Now they enter into a third-party provider contract with a delivery service for 8%, and they don't tell us about it. That is a violation of the law. Failure to notify. But we're not going to be treating it that stringently. We've completely ignored it, I think, at this point. But for reasons that are important to the management and enforcement of the law, we can't continue to do that. So we're trying to make it clear and also make it fair that there's this category of de minimis contracts that won't even require that notification.
Okay, so in the event that you find out that someone is breaching their ongoing obligation, what are you charging them? You charging them failure to disclose or change in fact, or what are you charging them? Or are you actually charging them with availing?
Failure to notify and availing potentially.
Okay. Understood. What about how do we usually interpret related companies? I suppose that's more a licensing question. Like, Adam, how do you usually deal with in the event that there are multiple entities from the same parent company that are providers? How would you consider that?
We ask for disclosure on the entire corporate structure. So if there's a parent company with subsidiary entities or some other LLC or trust or whatever holding company, we ask for disclosure on that, and we would follow that chain to identify those relationships. So I think with regards to multiple entities, maybe under one parent company having interest in the business, assuming that the corporate structure was identified correctly to us, we do have a mechanism in place now where we identify those relationships. And, should that information not be disclosed to us, obviously we'd make a referral to counsel's office if we found otherwise.
Okay. So Gary, would it be safe to say that the intent is for us to consider every TPP from the very top, like from the parent company? Is that right? Is that your intent?
Well, no, the third-party providers are entities that aren't in the corporate structure that Adam referenced or the ownership structure, but
No,
end
I'm
up getting
talking
a
about
percentage
the
of the
corporate. I'm referring to the corporate entities of the TPP. Like, there may be multiple entities under one parent company that can provide services.
So you're saying if I'm a licensee and I enter into 3 third-party provider agreements, each of them under 10%, but they're all with subsidiaries of the same company, what would we do about that?
Yes.
The answer is, right now, that would fall within the exception to this document. It would be additional evidence or information that would suggest control that isn't contemplated by this agreement and will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. If that's what ends up happening in the industry to try to
Already has.
maneuver around this, then maybe it's time for another advisory or another third-party provider or declaratory ruling to address that specific.
Okay, I think we're already there, as Chairman said. Okay, so just on our end, though, do we?
Can I just say a word on that as far as whether we're already there? One of the things that's important to recognize is the level of information you're receiving about what's going on in the industry. I think that the board should look at those in the industry who think that this document should not be approved because it doesn't go far enough, their incentive. And if the board is going to start to create additional rules to address things that members of the industry are suggesting exist, I think they need some evidence to support that. But if we get a declaratory ruling request or a request to have another advisory that says, delivery services are doing X, Y, and Z, okay, well, are we just going to take their word for it? Please provide us with some evidence of that so that we really understand all the facts before we start setting rules to address things that we're less familiar with. We are definitely familiar with the practice of parties that couldn't be on a license trying to get through the side door through agreements. We have, for example, people who provide quote-unquote consulting services to multiple liquor stores to end run the limitation on only being allowed to own one liquor store. This agreement addresses that. Things like that. So it's a fair point, and there may very well be other issues of control out there that may need immediate attention, but I think the board should have a record before it to rule on before it reaches those as well.
Okay. you know, when I was in the legislative branch, it was really always important to consider what's the outcome of our legislation. And so I just wonder how many licenses will be affected and how we plan to actually handle the increased flow. Would that impact our overall licensing time and all of those things? Just because we're already on a delay and I think the public is concerned about further delays. Adam, how would you weigh that?
I mean, it's tough to calculate the impact. I mean, without having all the facts of who currently uses these third-party providers.
Well, let's
Well, they
assume
said
everybody-
2/3 of the restaurants. I think one of the submissions says at least 2/3 of the restaurants.
No, and I would probably say it's higher than that.
In
so-
New York City.
Certainly, and I think
Not statewide, though, I wouldn't think.
based on certainly New York City, in a lot of the business models there, I would certainly expect a large uptick of new filings to add third-party providers or otherwise onto the license. So with regards to the impact it would have on licensing, this would certainly impact it. I think we would try to incorporate a way to streamline these kind of agreements as best we could. But yes, there would be a impact on the overall processing times, given that this would be an additional level of review and workload to the overall process.
Okay, and you have so here, in the process, I think there is a requirement to submit within 30 days after you entered into the agreement. Since
Yeah,
that
that's what it
actually
says.
that's kind of a loose thing that we really can't enforce anyway. I just feel like from the licensee standpoint, maybe it's helpful to have 45 to 60 days, just because after you enter it, then 30 days is like 4 weeks. I mean, you have to find someone to
30 days is actually an extension over some of the notification procedure that's already in the law, I believe is 10 days.
Yeah.
So this actually was an intent to extend it beyond what it currently is. If you want to make it 45 days, I don't think we'd have I certainly wouldn't think that would be create a material difference for what we're trying to accomplish. So we could certainly do that.
Chairman, is that okay?
Sure. And then, just to be clear, one of the comments that was made, I thought that did make sense, is and I think you did too, believed it made sense, was the extension from 3 months to a full year, right?
Yeah, so there's in the changes in revenue percentage paragraph, it currently says for any 3 consecutive months and or for any annual period based on the licensed business's fiscal year. And I'm proposing to comply with one of the responses that we remove the language any 3 consecutive months and or. So it would now read that the change in revenue percentage and the obligation would be based on any annual period based on the licensed business's fiscal year. For people who are wondering what the other changes are, they really are just to clarify the paragraphs that discuss the difference between circumstances where you have a contract that's less than 10% of total revenue and contracts that are more than 10% of total revenue.
Which were also raised in many of the comments.
Yes, and we also made the change about the attached form, which is not going to be attached but will be developed. And those are really just language and clarification changes that do not change the substantive meaning or impact of the document.
In many of the comments and some of them that came from industry attorneys, which made it even more shocking, this idea that the only sales that we're allowed to be aware of or should have a concern about are the sales the money that actually goes to the alcohol alone, which in my experience, is absolutely not what the law says or has been through case law. And the fact that not many, but a few of the industry, most of the third-party providers all assumed that and stated it as if it was fact, and it's completely wrong. And then our industry attorneys said it, a couple of them, which was shocking to me as well, because they, I would think, would know that that's wrong.
If that were the case, then how could our 10% rule on landlords be based on total revenues as opposed to just the alcohol revenues?
I mean, like you said, it's
they
about
rise-
control of the business. And
Correct.
if you're taking 90% of the food but 0 of the alcohol, you have control of the business.
Correct. And of course, if we even attempted to fashion something that related to that for some purpose, it could easily be circumvented. But again, I think that's based on the confusion between this concept that people who aren't on licenses shouldn't profit from the sale of alcohol and the control issue that we're talking about here. But the people who are on licenses, who are not on licenses, who are in third-party provider agreements, wouldn't be profiting from the sale of alcohol. They'd be profiting from the sales, the goods or services they're providing and they're getting paid for. And that's why it's really not the same issue.
Anything else then?
Tom, give
All right, so-
me 2 minutes. Give me 2
Sure.
minutes just to talk to council.
Sure thing.
Hey, Chairman, you think there's anything I need to hear?
Go ahead. No, it was really just about the logistics of licensing. We're ready now.
All right, then, if there's no further discussion, what's before the members now, as I understand it, would be the red line version of the proposed advisory with the one change regarding the 30-day notification. And I apologize, I missed what you were going to replace it with.
I think we said 45 days.
Okay, so with that modification to the red line version of the proposed advisory, unless there's some other further discussion, I'll ask the members for their vote on the matter, whether or not to approve as proposed or otherwise.
I'm going to vote to approve as proposed with some of the changes that we just discussed.
Okay, Chairman Bradley.
I'm going to vote to approve as well with the changes we discussed.
All right, then. We're going to move on then to item 1742, which is a public hearing, so to speak, on the adoption of rules to amend our ATAP regulations. You've got before you the information regarding the rule itself, and as I understand it, there was no comments received for the proposed rules.
Yes, yeah. I just wanted to, just so for people who are listening, we have minimum curriculum requirements for the alcohol training awareness program in our rules right now. And based on an effort to try to introduce the need for education on sexual violence and related issues, we've proposed a rule change to add an additional requirement for the minimum curriculum requirements for a certified ATAP school. The additional requirement reads information regarding sexual violence detection and prevention, including building awareness, increasing bystander intervention skills, and providing support to staff in responding to incidents of violence. So that would be added to the list of what is already 10 or 12 minimum curriculum requirements. We provided the public notice on this rule change. The comments period has run and we did receive no comments. So we are now at this meeting to ask the members to approve this rule change.
So with that, Commissioner Fan,
I'm voting to approve adoption of the new language to add information regarding sexual violence detection and prevention to existing ATAP programs.
Chairman Bradley.
I will also vote to approve the rule changes.
The next item I have is 1742A. This is a request for reconsideration. However, the chairman is recused from this matter, so we will have to hold it over for another meeting. And the last item I have on the calendar is 1742B. This is a request for reconsideration regarding disapproval by licensing board of temporary beer and wine permit applications.
So members, before you is a request for reconsideration on 19 temporary beer wine permit applications for the Genesee Speedway. The licensing bureau disapproved the permits based on a license that was currently active at the premises that was summarily suspended last year. The applicant is now requesting reconsideration because that disciplinary matter had been resolved. So the prior licensee there had offered a CNC of cancellation and bond, which the members accepted at a board meeting in May. And again, they are now requesting reconsideration on those permits because there is no longer a license there.
So
Right.
just to be clear, the former licensee is the owner, is Genesee Speedway.
Yeah, let me give some background here. So in and around July 4th, Genesee Speedway was advertising a significant violation of the restriction against live sporting events and alcohol sales. And we advised them in advance that they needed to cancel the event because it was, I think it was June or July, the height of the pandemic. And they basically told us, we're not doing it. We sent investigators out there, and sure enough, they had spectators.
Oh, they
in
told
the
you
stands.
they told you the event was not going to go on.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Either way, we suspended the license for that violation. This is a speedway that has races about once a week over the summer, or an extended period past the summer. They did nothing with respect to the suspension for many months. But then now it seems that they had they'd agreed to lease their space or rent their space out to an entity that is a nonprofit, but although they're being paid, to basically have alcohol service at every one of their races, and then sent in a request that the discipline against them be resolved with a cancellation. So they're canceling their license and running the fact that they are no longer licensed by having a series of permits for exactly the same racing schedule to sell alcohol on the same premises.
And profit from it
Correct.
by collecting rent.
Correct.
Okay.
So yes, there has been a change in circumstances. That was a pending disciplinary matter, which has now been resolved, but it was resolved with a cancellation, which means they're not allowed to sell alcohol on the premises. But now they want to rent out the premises to sell alcohol. Essentially.
Okay.
All right, then, on the request for reconsideration, Commissioner Fan?
Oh, sorry. Let me just ask a question. Adam, do you have that lease on file?
We don't have a copy of the agreement. We do have an email reflecting a
$300.
$300 rent amount per event.
Per event.
So each day that the license, a permit would be requested, a $300 transaction to rent the premises.
And the fire department is a non-profit?
Volunteer.
It's a volunteer fire department. From their representation of what we can tell, it's a not-for-profit entity. And they in the reconsideration request, they indicate that they're going to be using the proceeds for a new fire building. So again, I don't think the question here is whether or not the entity applying is appropriate, rather than is it appropriate to issue permits to a premises where the prior licensee was summarily suspended for egregious violations of the governor's executive order, and in which they essentially avoided severe disciplinary matters by having their license canceled as an offer. So I think that's the real question here, is whether or not we want to
Yeah,
issue
so
permits.
this is basically just more of the same of the one before, where they submitted cancel and bond and then pay for someone else to do the license. I find it curious that this charity event that's supposed to happen from the fire department, it's over 12 consecutive Saturdays and one Friday
It's
and
actually-
Thursdays.
It's actually not even that. If you go on the Genesee Raceway's website, you can see that the dates of these events are the dates of each Genesee Raceway race. Sometimes they're not on Fridays or Saturdays. They
Yeah.
mirror each other. This place isn't open to serve alcohol on any other days, I don't think. So it's essentially
Yeah, I'm
replacing the
little
license they got canceled.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed that the East Pembroke Volunteer Fire Department got themselves involved in this situation here. I vote to deny.
All right, Chairman Bradley on reconsideration.
Yeah, I'm going to vote to deny as well. All the permits, obviously, given the violations by the former licensee, there's no way that I would be allowing, and not only the violations, but the way those violations came about, there's no way that I would be condoning them profiting off the sale of alcohol at this time.
All right, Chairman, I have no other items on the calendar. Do you have anything else?
I don't. Thank you all.
All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.